I still remember the first time I heard my mother's words echoing inside me like a warning bell. If one day you find yourself betrayed, don't stay silent. Speak the truth, no matter how much it hurts. At the time, I brushed it off as one of those life lessons mothers love to repeat. But years later, on the night that was supposed to be the happiest of my life, her words came back to haunt me. Sharp, urgent, undeniable. Before I tell you how everything unraveled, let me take you back a little. Because if you don't know who I was before the storm, you won't understand the devastation or the strength it took to survive it. As we step into today's gripping chapter, remember to subscribe to Her Betrayal Stories and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a single twist. This channel brings you powerful narratives of sacrifice, betrayal, and jaw-dropping reversals. And tell me, where are you tuning in from? Share it in the comments. You might discover a story here that mirrors your own journey. My name is Emily Parker, and for most of my adult life, I believed in love with the kind of faith people usually reserve for religion. I was 32 when I married Michael Harris, a man who, on the surface, seemed everything a woman could wish for. Ambitious, charming, attentive. People used to say we looked like the perfect couple stepping out of a magazine spread. But perfection is a fragile glass, and mine shattered in ways I never saw coming. Michael and I met through my best friend, Rachel Collins. Rachel and I went way back. We'd shared dorm rooms in college, shared secrets late into the night, even shared last dollars when times were rough. She was like a sister to me, the kind of friend you swear will be in your life forever. When Michael and I started dating, she was our biggest supporter, teasing me that I'd finally found a man who matched my heart. Looking back, I wonder if those smiles of hers ever hid something darker. Life wasn't easy in those early years. Michael struggled to get his real estate business off the ground, and I carried most of the weight. I worked long shifts as a nurse, covering bills, cooking, managing everything so he could chase his dream. I told myself that's what love was: partnership, sacrifice, standing beside someone through storms. But sometimes, sacrifice turns invisible. The more you give, the less they see. I can't count how many nights I came home exhausted, still in scrubs smelling of disinfectant, only to find Michael on the couch scrolling through his phone, half-heartedly asking if dinner was ready. He wasn't cruel, not at first, just distracted, preoccupied. I thought it was stress. I excused him, the way women do when they've been taught to love louder than they hurt. And Rachel? She was always around, helping Michael with his business plans, volunteering to pick up decorations for our wedding, whispering advice that sounded supportive. I never questioned it. After all, she was my best friend. But little things began to stick out. Once, during a small dinner party, Michael poured Rachel a glass of wine before he even looked at me. I laughed it off, joking, "Hey, I thought I was the bride to be here." But inside, something tightened. Another time, I caught Rachel borrowing one of my scarves without asking, something she used to do in college. But this time, it felt different, almost territorial. And then there was Michael's phone. He became more protective of it, slipping it into his pocket whenever I walked into the room. If I asked, he'd chuckle and say, "Work stuff, Em, nothing exciting." But my instincts whispered otherwise. Our wedding day came on a crisp October afternoon. The leaves burned golden and red, the kind of backdrop you dream about for photographs. Guests filled the garden of the estate Michael had insisted we rent, despite the cost. I should have felt like the luckiest woman alive. But as I stood there in lace and white, I noticed Michael disappear midway through the reception. He returned 20 minutes later, his tie loosened, hair slightly mussed. I asked where he'd been, and he brushed it off with a smile. Business call. A business call. On our wedding night. If you've ever felt a chill cut through joy, you'll understand what that moment was like. Still, I pushed the doubt down. I had just pledged my life to this man in front of everyone I loved. Surely I owed him my trust. That night, the night meant to seal our promises, was the loneliest of my life. Michael kissed my forehead, muttered something about exhaustion, and rolled onto the other bed in the suite. Not the same bed. Not beside me. My dress still lay across the chair, untouched, and I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling less like a bride and more like a ghost in my own marriage. Hours ticked by. At some point, I heard footsteps creaking in the hallway outside. I thought maybe it was staff cleaning up after the party. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to stay in the dream just a little longer. But my mother's words echoed again. If one day you find yourself betrayed, don't stay silent. And as I pressed my ear against the door leading to the sitting room, I heard sounds no bride should ever hear on her wedding night. Heavy breathing, a muffled laugh, and then Rachel's voice, whispering something I can never forget. What if she finds out? My heart froze, and Michael's answer was a low murmur I could barely catch, yet it was enough to tear everything apart. I stood there trembling, my hand on the doorknob, knowing that if I turned it, my entire world would collapse. What would you have done in that moment? Would you burst inside, demand answers, or swallow the betrayal and pretend nothing happened? Because that night, on the edge of becoming either a fool or a fighter, I made a choice that changed everything. That first night of marriage left me staring at the ceiling, unsure if I had woken into a dream or a warning. By morning, I had decided on silence, a silence sharp enough to cut me, but soft enough to hide behind. Michael played the doting groom at breakfast, pouring coffee for his relatives, adjusting his cufflinks as though nothing had been left unfinished between us. He was close, too close, an orbiting shadow rehearsing affection for an audience. When his gaze met mine, it wasn't love I saw. It was calculation, a glimmer of someone already managing optics. Rachel claimed a headache and slipped out early, shoes in hand. I watched her wave from the curb before climbing into a car, the kind of scene that might look innocent in a photograph, but felt weighted when viewed from the inside. Something in me tugged loose that day, like the hem of a dress snagging on a nail. That evening, when we returned to our apartment, everything was too neat, too quiet. 2 suitcases sat like props against the wall. Unopened gifts glimmered under soft lamplight. Michael stretched, pressed a perfunctory kiss into the air, and said, "We made it." His tone was that of a runner crossing a finish line, not a man stepping into a life with his wife. I almost asked about the sounds I'd heard through the door the night before. I almost asked why Rachel's laugh echoed inside my head louder than the applause of our wedding guests. But I didn't. Questions without proof are too easy to dismiss. The weeks that followed stripped illusions faster than any storm. Michael's endearments grew curt, barked syllables tossed across rooms. His phone, once left casually on the counter, never left his palm. His absences stretched into late-night meetings, and the scent he brought home no longer belonged to me. When I asked, he gave me a patient smile that felt rehearsed. Not everything is about you." I held on to old habits, grocery lists, warm dinners, notes stuck to the fridge like bandages over fractures. But the more I gave, the more invisible I became. My mother's words whispered louder, "Don't stay silent." Yet, without evidence, what voice would anyone hear except the voice of a hysterical wife? Rachel reappeared as if she had never left. She lounged at my kitchen table, sipping coffee from my mug, swinging her leg like she owned the rhythm of the room. "So, how's married life?" she asked, her smile sweet but sharp. "Busy," I said, forcing lightness. "Michael's been working nonstop," she added. "I'm proud of him." That single I clung to me like burrs. When I tried to joke about exhaustion, Rachel reached across the counter and patted my hand, her gesture patronizing, almost clinical, like a nurse to a patient. Only I was the nurse. Then came the documents. Michael slid a stapled packet toward me one night, his tone casual but his eyes watchful. "Just a small transfer. It'll streamline things. Sign here." The pages looked official enough, legal phrasing softened by business jargon. The clause at the bottom, however, told the real story. Assets shifted solely under his company's name. "I need time to read this," I said. "Don't complicate things, Em. I'm trying to make life easier." "My life is easier when I know what I'm agreeing to." He chuckled, but the corners of his mouth hardened. "Don't turn this into a fight." When I refused to sign, he smiled thinly, tucked the papers aside, and tossed. "Then at least handle the utilities this month. My cash is tied up." That night, long after he'd gone to bed, I studied the paperwork under a lamp's yellow glow. My name appeared twice, but never where it mattered. I carried the folder to the hospital the next day and asked a colleague's husband, a man in real estate, to skim it. His reply arrived minutes later. "Tell him you're not a fool. Do not sign." It was the first time I realized my doubts were not paranoia. They were survival. Michael's strategy shifted. In public, he played the devoted husband, arm around my shoulder, jokes about my long shifts. Admiration spun for friends. In private, he punished with silence or cutting remarks. "You're too emotional," he told me while I washed dishes. "Maybe you're not cut out for marriage after all. Maybe you're replaceable." The word landed like a gavel. Replaceable. If anyone watching has heard those words, you know they don't just bruise, they attempt to erase. I began keeping records the way nurses chart symptoms, without drama, just precision. Receipts tucked into his pockets. Hotel charges that didn't match his schedule. A florist invoice that printed by accident on our shared machine. I sent everything to a hidden email, each file labeled and dated. Evidence would be my shield. Rachel, meanwhile, pressed further into our lives. She invited Michael to networking events, sent me photos afterward with Michael circled like a trophy. In one picture, his profile leaned toward a familiar silhouette just outside the frame, a flash of hair, a ring, her. I stared until the pixels broke apart, until denial was impossible. The hospital remained my refuge. Patients whose suffering at least obeyed cause and effect. A bandage calmed bleeding. A pill lowered fever. But at home, every kindness I gave was swallowed into silence. Then Michael placed a velvet box on the dinner table. Inside was a necklace, heavy and gleaming. "Wear it Friday," he said. "Rachel got us into the Chancellor's gala." I coiled the necklace in my palm upstairs, staring at its curve like a question mark. Who was it truly for? The gala shimmered under chandeliers, music drifting from a corner quartet. Rachel appeared in silver silk, kissed the air near my cheek, and whispered, "You look stunning." Michael, eyes fixed on her, agreed too quickly. Later, while he charmed donors, Rachel leaned against a column beside me, glass in hand. Her smile curled. "Some people are destined for more than waiting," she said. "Waiting for what?" I asked. "For their turn," she answered, eyes glittering. Her words were less a confession than a claim. I stepped out into the corridor for air. That's when I heard it. Michael's low murmur and Rachel's answering laugh, muffled through a half-open door. I moved closer. Through a narrow gap, I saw his hand on her face, the necklace, the one he had gifted me, sparkling against her chest as though it had always been hers. I didn't storm in. I memorized the angle of his hand, the softness of her laugh, details like entries in a medical chart. On the drive home, Michael chattered about business prospects. I stared at the blur of city lights and said only, "I'm taking notes." That night, while he slept, I opened my laptop. Inside a folder disguised as recipes, I created subfolders: invoices, audio, legal. I uploaded receipts, screenshots, every fragment of truth I had gathered. Then I pressed record on a voice memo, captured my own heartbeat, and whispered, "This is the day I refuse to be erased." By dawn, my phone buzzed with an automated hotel confirmation. Michael's name, 2 guests. Check in that afternoon. The letters blurred, but clarity filled me. Mini cliffhanger. If you were standing in my shoes, evidence mounting, betrayal echoing, would you confront them now or keep building until no one could deny the truth? I slipped my keys into my purse, steadied my breath, and walked out the door with a plan I hadn't yet dared to name aloud. I didn't drive straight to the boutique hotel. I drove around the block twice, parked across the street, and just sat there gripping the steering wheel. My heart was a drum against my ribs, but my mind was calm in a way it hadn't been for months. I kept hearing my mother's words. If you find yourself betrayed, don't stay silent. And for the first time, I understood that silence wasn't the same as patience. Silence could be preparation. Through the windshield, I saw the entrance. Couples checked in, bellboys carried luggage, laughter spilled from the lobby doors. At 2:17 p.m., Michael arrived. He wasn't alone. Rachel's hand brushed his arm as they stepped inside. I didn't follow them. Not yet. Instead, I took out my phone and opened the voice recorder. September 14th, 2:17 p.m., Michael Harris and Rachel Collins entering Riverside Hotel. Together. I added the timestamp and location. Evidence, neat and cold. A nurse's instinct is to document, because memory bends under stress. But facts survive. I waited an hour before I walked inside. My palms were damp, but I forced myself to smile at the receptionist. "Hi, I think my husband checked in earlier. Michael Harris. Could you connect me to his room?" She hesitated, typing. "Yes, room 407. Shall I ring for you?" "That's all right," I said, voice steady. "I'll go up." By the time I stood in front of the door, my breath was shallow. Muffled laughter spilled into the hallway. Then Rachel's voice, silk over poison. "What if she finds out?" Michael chuckled. "She won't. Emily always wants proof. Without it, she'll just keep quiet. That's her weakness." Her weakness. I pressed record again. The phone trembled in my hand, but my resolve was solid. I didn't storm inside. I didn't give them the satisfaction of chaos. Instead, I let the microphone drink in every syllable. That evening, I returned home before Michael did. I set the table as if nothing were wrong. Roast chicken, his favorite. I wanted normalcy to be a stage, not a comfort. When he walked in, humming, adjusting his cufflinks, I almost laughed at the performance. "How was your day?" I asked lightly. "Busy," he said, kissing my cheek. "Meetings stacked, but I closed a deal." Rachel's perfume lingered on his collar. I smiled, carving the chicken. "That's wonderful." He didn't notice my hands had stopped trembling. Days turned into weeks, and I kept building. Every late-night text, every receipt, every voicemail where Rachel's voice slipped through, archived, labeled, Saved. I was a woman in mourning, yes, but I was also a woman in training. Training to be underestimated. Training to be precise. Then came the night everything tilted. Michael shoved another stack of papers toward me over dinner. "We need your signature. Investors are waiting. Don't overthink it this time." I looked down. Another deed. This one would move our joint savings into his company's sole account. My name vanished like chalk under rain. "Michael," I said softly, "what happens if your business fails?" His jaw tightened. "It won't." "And if it does?" His eyes flashed, irritation sharp. "Then we rebuild. Don't you trust me?" Trust. The word stung, stripped bare of meaning. "I just want to be sure," I murmured. "You're either with me or against me, Emily." His tone dropped like a gavel. "Choose." I slid the papers back across the table, unsigned. Something ugly passed over his face. He slammed his hand down. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said, voice quiet but firm. "I'm making a choice." That night, when he fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and opened the hidden folder on my laptop. Dozens of files stared back at me. Voice recordings, receipts, photos. Proof that silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. And then, as if the universe wanted me armed for war, I found something I hadn't expected. While searching for a misplaced utility bill in the file cabinet, I stumbled across a manila envelope marked confidential. Inside, a will. Not just any will. It was Michael's late father's estate documents. I skimmed through, pulse quickening. The estate wasn't in Michael's sole name, as he'd always claimed. Half was legally mine by marital rights. Rights he had tried to bury beneath paperwork. At the bottom, a signature from the family lawyer confirmed it. Michael had lied. Not just about Rachel, but about money, property, legacy. He wanted me erased not just from his heart, but from his future. I sat there until dawn, the will spread out before me like a map. For the first time in months, I felt the ground steady under my feet. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was holding the very weapon he feared most: truth. When Michael woke, he found me making coffee as if nothing had changed. He kissed my cheek, muttered about another long day ahead, and left. The moment the door clicked shut, I whispered into my phone recorder, "I am not afraid anymore." Because now I had both proof and power. And when those two walk hand in hand, betrayal has nowhere left to hide. What would you have done in my place? Confront him immediately, or wait until the stage was set? Until everyone who doubted you would have to see the truth with their own eyes? Because I chose to wait. And that choice led to a reckoning no one in my family will ever forget. The night before everything came crashing down, I barely slept. Not because of fear, because of anticipation. I had built my case piece by piece like a puzzle only I knew how to solve. Tomorrow, the final piece would lock into place. Michael believed he had cornered me. He thought I was just a tired nurse, too drained to question, too meek to resist. Rachel believed I was too dependent on friendship to ever fight back. What neither of them understood was that a woman's silence is not surrender. It is strategy. The opportunity came disguised as family dinner. Michael's mother had invited us to the Harris estate for Sunday supper, a tradition she insisted on keeping alive. Family unity, she called it. I called it theater. Perfect. I arrived with a casserole and a calmness that felt foreign in my bones. Rachel was already there, of course, laughing with Michael in the kitchen as if she belonged to the bloodline. His mother doted on her, touching her arm, praising her for helping Michael so much with business matters. My stomach clenched, but I smiled. We all sat down at the long oak table. Silverware gleamed, crystal glasses caught the chandelier light. Conversations wove between bites of roast beef and potatoes. Michael leaned back in his chair, radiating the smugness of a man convinced he controlled every string. When dessert plates were cleared, he cleared his throat. "I have an announcement," he said, sliding a folder onto the table. "Rachel and I have been working on a new investment project. It's going to change everything for this family." Rachel's cheeks flushed. She looked down, feigning modesty. I tilted my head, folding my hands. "And what exactly is this project, Michael?" He tapped the folder. "A development deal, but it requires reallocating certain assets." His eyes flicked to me. "Emily knows all about it. She's been dragging her feet signing the necessary documents." Gasps circled the table. His mother's brows knitted. "Emily, why would you hold back your husband's future?" I took a slow breath. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a neat stack of papers, the copies I'd been saving. Because what Michael asked me to sign wasn't about family, it was about erasing me. The room went still. I spread the documents across the table. These deeds would have transferred our savings and property rights into his name only. Convenient, isn't it? Especially when you consider the will his father left behind. I slid the will forward. Gasps again. Eyes widened. Michael's mother's hand flew to her mouth. "This document," I continued, "proves half of the estate belongs to me by marital rights. Michael knew this. He hid it. He tried to trick me into signing away what is legally mine." Michael's face flushed crimson. "Emily, that's—" "Don't." I cut him off, my voice steady. "Don't lie. Again. Because I have more." I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and the room filled with sound. Rachel's voice. "What if she finds out?" Michael's reply. "She won't. Emily always wants proof. Without it, she'll keep quiet. That's her weakness." The recording played like thunder in a chapel. Forks clattered. His mother's eyes blazed with disbelief and fury. Rachel froze, her face draining of color. I looked directly at her. "Weakness, Rachel? Is that what you called my trust? I opened my home, my life to you. And this is what you gave back." She stammered. "Emily, I—" "Save it," I said, voice sharp as glass. Michael lunged forward, trying to snatch the phone, but I pulled it back calmly. "No more games, Michael. Everyone here now knows the truth." His mother slammed her hand on the table. "Is this true? You betrayed your wife and our family's trust?" Michael's mouth opened and closed, a fish gasping on dry land. He had no script for this moment. I leaned forward, my voice low but powerful. "This villa? This estate? Half of it is mine, and you're trespassing on my dignity every time you think I'll stay silent." Rachel pushed back from the table, chair screeching. "I didn't mean—" I turned on her. "Didn't mean? You meant every stolen glance, every whispered plan, every knife you buried in my back while smiling to my face. But remember this. Betrayal burns bridges you can never rebuild." The room erupted. Michael's mother crying, siblings shouting, Rachel fumbling for her purse. I stood in the eye of the storm, calm as dawn. Then I added the final twist. "I won't just walk away from this," I said. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. All of this evidence will be presented in court. The will, the recordings, the documents. You tried to strip me of everything, Michael. Instead, you handed me the leverage to take back what's mine, legally, publicly, permanently." Michael sagged into his chair, eyes hollow. Rachel slunk toward the door, her heels clicking like a retreating army. I gathered my papers, slipped the phone into my bag, and stood tall. "Family," I said softly, looking around the table, "is not built on lies. Respect isn't given by blood. It's earned by love and truth. And tonight, the truth finally speaks." As I left the estate, the night air filled my lungs like freedom. The weight of years of sacrifice, silence, and betrayal lifted. Behind me, the Harris legacy cracked open, exposing rot to the light. Ahead of me, for the first time in years, stretched possibility. I wasn't the wife erased. I wasn't the friend betrayed. I was Emily Parker, the woman who chose not to stay silent. Michael and Rachel thought the worst was over when I exposed them that night. But betrayal doesn't just collapse quietly, it echoes. And their downfall had only just begun. If you were me, would you stop here, satisfied with the truth revealed? Or would you see it through to the very end, ensuring justice wasn't just spoken but written into law? Because I chose the latter. And that's why the ending of this story is one I will never forget. The morning after the confrontation at the Harris estate, I woke to a silence that felt different. Not heavy, not suffocating, liberating. For the first time in months, maybe years, I could breathe without the weight of Michael's shadow pressing on my chest. But freedom, I reminded myself, isn't just a feeling. It has to be secured. I met with my lawyer that week, sliding the neatly organized folder across her desk. She skimmed the evidence, bank statements, receipts, voice recordings, the will, her brows lifting higher with each page. Finally, she looked at me and said, "Emily, this isn't just betrayal. This is fraud, and we can prove it." Hearing those words was like hearing a diagnosis after months of symptoms. You're not crazy. You're not imagining it. The wound is real, and now it has a name. Court came swiftly. Michael fought, of course. He hired attorneys, puffed his chest, tried to spin the narrative. He claimed the recordings were taken out of context. He insisted Rachel was just a supportive friend. But truth, once documented, does not flinch under cross-examination. My lawyer played the recordings in court. The jury heard Rachel's nervous whisper, "What if she finds out?" And Michael's smug reply, "She won't. Emily always wants proof. Without it, she'll keep quiet. That's her weakness." When those words echoed through the courtroom, Michael dropped his gaze. Rachel shifted in her seat, her face pale. Then came the will. Signed, sealed, confirmed by the family attorney under oath. Half the estate was legally mine. Michael had tried to erase me from the legacy his own father had intended me to share. The judge's gavel struck like thunder. Mrs. Emily Parker retains her rightful share of the Harris estate. The contested documents presented by Mr. Harris are null and void. Furthermore, restitution will be made for funds improperly transferred. It was over. The law spoke where love had failed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust toward me, voices clamoring. "Emily, how do you feel after today's ruling?" I paused, the autumn wind lifting my hair, and answered simply, "Respect isn't given by blood or vows. It's earned by truth, by love, by kindness. And when that's betrayed, the law is here to make things right." The quote ran in the papers the next day. My inbox filled with messages. Women I'd never met. Strangers from across the country writing, "Thank you for speaking up. I went through something similar. You gave me courage." Their words healed me more than the ruling ever could. And what of Michael and Rachel? Their downfall came quietly, then all at once. Michael's business, already teetering, collapsed under the weight of scandal. Investors fled. His reputation, once polished, became a cautionary tale whispered at country clubs. "Don't be a Michael. Harris." Rachel fared no better. The companies she worked for distanced themselves immediately, citing moral conduct clauses. Her friendships evaporated as quickly as her credibility. By the time I heard she'd left town, she was little more than a ghost haunting her own mistakes. Did I feel pity? Perhaps a flicker. But more than that, I felt relief. Justice doesn't always roar. It often arrives in silence, in doors closed that will never open again. Life after betrayal is not a fairy tale. Healing is slow, uneven. Some nights, I still woke to echoes of laughter behind hotel doors. Some mornings, I stared at the estate's wide lawns and remembered sitting at that oak table with lies spread like linen. But healing also meant rediscovering myself. I poured energy into my nursing, finding joy in caring for those who still believed in compassion. I joined a community group for women navigating divorce and betrayal. We shared stories over coffee, our laughter tinged with survival, our tears stitched with solidarity. And then, months later, when I least expected it, I met David Miller, a gentle, steady man who didn't need to dim my light to see his own. He wasn't a rescue, he was a partner. With him, I learned love doesn't have to be a battlefield, it can be a safe harbor. Standing here now, telling you my story, I see my journey not just as pain, but as proof. Proof that betrayal doesn't define you. Your response does. Proof that silence can be power when wielded with intention. Proof that justice, though slow, will find its way if you refuse to give up. And if you're listening, wondering whether your own story matters, let me say this. It does. You are not weak for staying. You are not foolish for loving. And you are not alone in your hurt. If you've ever been told you're useless, if you've ever been made to feel invisible, I want you to hear me now. You are seen. You are worthy. And one day, your voice will be the truth that shatters someone else's lie. So tell me, if you were in my place, would you have gathered proof quietly or confronted betrayal the moment you sensed it? Have you ever witnessed injustice in your own family that deserved to be exposed? Share your thoughts in the comments. Because here, every story is a reminder. No one has to suffer in silence. Together, we speak up for fairness and respect. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own strength, don't forget to subscribe to her betrayal stories and hit the notification bell. Here, you'll always find stories of sacrifice, betrayal, and shocking turnarounds that remind us justice may be delayed, but it is never denied. Because happiness isn't handed to us, it's something we rebuild from the ruins, stronger than before.